Computer Science from UC Santa Cruz. So Mikhail will be sharing with us what he has been doing in OpenStreetMap. But I'm sorry, I think I did not introduce myself. My name is Cecile Blake, and I had the pleasure of working in Jamaica's National Spatial Data Management, and I currently work in the UN Statistics Division with Global Geospatial Information Management. My apologies. So we don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to ask you to abide by all the protocols in terms of uh, unmuting, sorry, don't speak in. If it's best, don't put on your cameras. And we're asking you to, if you have questions, we'll have a question and answer segment at the end after Mikkel speaks. And we're going to ask you to put your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer your questions that you post. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our speaker, and let's go. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thanks very much, Cecile, for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Good morning in Jamaica. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. And I send greetings from the global OpenStreetMap community, which are thousands of people who create and use map data all over the world. I'm really happy to be here. And thank you for having me. I want to start my presentation, so I just need to be able to share screen. If I can. Introduction and hello everyone. Good morning in Jamaica. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. And I send greetings from the global OpenStreetMap community, which are thousands of people who create and use map data all over the world. I'm really happy to be here. And thank you for having me. Let me know if I want to start my presentation, so I just need to be able to share screen. If I can. Introduction is own the IP, support the community. We're here to help if you want to get involved with the OpenStreetMap community. OpenStreetMap in Jamaica, I think the IP, the map is awesome. Support the community. Really a lot of data. We're here to help if you want to get involved with the OpenStreetMap community. There hasn't been that much activity yet. OpenStreetMap in Jamaica, I own the IP. The map is awesome. Support the community. There's been some a lot of data. We're here to help if you want to get involved with. There hasn't been that much activity yet. OpenStreetMap in Jamaica, I own the IP. The map is awesome. Support the community.
Right. So we need to shift that now. Oh, wait. I think you're hearing. Wait. They're hearing us.
You know, and I'm sure many in the audience knows that educators and students have these skills. A larger world of solution seeking and innovation is open to them, and they can start to apply these skills to real world problems. We've seen that across schools globally, and we've seen it right here on the Esri stage in many UCs.
That's true. Yeah. Yes, I like this idea of an on-ramp, but even your on-ramp, that MapMaker is accessing the global GIS content. So it's making it real for kids at an early age, and then you step them into learn by doing and getting more and more sophisticated. So yeah, and that requires building, like you did with the MapMaker, new experiences for children so that they can learn and as part of their overall curriculum. That's bringing like the slideshows where into it.
Yeah. And we actually have a demo that illustrates some of this.
Well, let's look at it.
Yes.
Hi there. My name's Riley Peak, and I'm the team lead for LearnArc-GIS. Teams from across Esri and National Geographic have been merging tech and talent to create new high-quality resources for your classroom and home learning environment. Our co-designed videos, activities, and collections will be hosted on both organizations' websites and will help your child stay engaged and preparing for their future, no matter where they're learning from. Let me share with you a few examples of what you'll find and where to find them. At National Geographic, we've started publishing instructional tools and resources. Their resource library is a rich collection for parents and educators seeking high-quality, free curricular activities that are mapped to standards and incorporate the work of explorers and storytellers. One of our first collaborative projects is this collection of 20 GIS activities for addressing and understanding climate change. Every collection is going to include a detailed description, appropriate grade level, and subjects so that you have everything that you need in order to decide where it's going to fit into your child's curriculum and schedule. If you'd like your student to build skills and confidence in ArcGIS Online first, have them work through one of the Getting Started series. They don't require any login. They include short videos and simple instructions. For example, this skill builder on using the measure tool in ArcGIS Online starts with a short video calculating the area of Mount Vesuvius, and then moves on to simple tasks such as measuring the length of Greenland, which is about 1,600 miles, and comparing it to the length of Africa, which they look very similar here, but Africa is actually about twice as big. And that can start a discussion about how projections are going to affect the way things appear on the map. We've also built end-to-end instructional workflows for learning how to create maps and apps and solving more complex spatial problems. This activity, called Changing Waters, is a scaffolded exercise of 3 activities that build upon one another. The first requires no login and can take under 10 minutes for the learner to explore places in the world that has experienced significant changes in their water supply. For example, the Aral Sea in Central Asia was once the 4th largest lake in the world. The image on the left is from 2014, and the image on the right is from 2019. It's a dramatic drop in water there. Lake Shasta in Northern California was experiencing years of extreme drought before an El Nino spring in 2016. You can see, again, the dramatic change between the 2 timeframes. The second activity in Changing Waters invites the student to recreate the swipe map of the Aral Sea with imagery provided. And then the third activity encourages the learner to pick somewhere in the world where they've observed experiencing change. We'll help them find satellite imagery, construct their swipe app in a story, and allows them to share what they've learned about a place that's important to them. Story maps are another great space for Esri and National Geographic to meet because they can be used in a variety of ways to bolster youth education, build their knowledge on world issues, and it's a creative platform for them to be able to build their own stories and projects. This informational story map is called 5 Years of Drought. It uses a combination of creative, eye-catching maps, and the first interactive map allows the student to see patterns at the country level. Then they can zoom in to more specific locations, such as this area southeast of Phoenix, which has experienced sustained drought over the entirety of the past 5 years. I'm going to switch over now to Esri's brand new beta site called Teach with GIS. At this site, you'll find teacher testimonials, ready-made teaching tools, student and teacher training materials, as well as our National Geographic collaboration resources. So if you saw the Explorer video clips early on, here's where you can go to find the full-length videos, coupled with hands-on activities, and include story maps by the explorers themselves. So, create a map of deforestation with Jane Goodall Institute. Create an elevation profile of Paul Salopek's journey across South Asia. Or join Dr. Ray Wynn Grant in creating a map of black bears to predict human interaction. Everything I've shown you here today is really only the beginning of the work that we plan to do with National Geographic. So go and bookmark the National Geographic Education Resource Library and teachwithgis.com to stay informed on this exciting collaboration to help your students become solution seekers for the planet.
Wow, Riley. Wow. You know, Vicki, this is great. I mean, I'm seeing some of the first stuff live for the first time.
They are great tools. They're going to allow educators who reach all of these young people to help those young people have the knowledge and skills they need to act with urgency and be the architects of change. We're very excited about them.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this idea of digital natives, but this discussion, we started talking about being spatially native. Just imagine children who are spatially or geospatially native. This could change the way people see the world. I've been hearing about this thing called Gen Geo. What's this all about?
Well, this in many ways is what you refer to as spatially native solution seekers. Generation Geo, or Gen Geo as we call it, is how National Geographic refers to this building community of youth. They're youth that are committed to creating a sustainable future and a thriving planet, and they are acting in their local communities and working together around the globe, lifting their voices, helping drive progress and inspiring hope and action. And, you know, they're leading that new age of discovery, exploration, and impact. And at National Geographic, we're very committed to supporting their efforts and lifting their voices. In fact, yesterday, Jack, I had the privilege of announcing a group of change makers that exemplified Gen Geo. They're the spring 2020 National Geographic cohort of young explorers. Collectively, they represent 6 countries, and they are leading efforts around everything from scientific innovation to conservation to education to civic engagement. And they are united by this common purpose, a profound desire to make a difference, and doing it with confidence, courage, and conviction. It's part of that, 100 million that I mentioned earlier. And these young leaders in particular are part of the 5 million whose voices we want to lift and who this partnership will help us accelerate.
Yes. Well, again, my heart is battering. This is so wonderful. But look, this isn't just between National Geographic and ourselves. I love that partnership, of course, but how do you imagine our users getting involved and benefiting, and how can they help? How can all of us help you actually in this vision?
Well, two things immediately come to mind. One, most of us have educators in our lives somewhere, whether it's traditional educators or parents as educators or others in the community who in creating, they are going to be such impactful tools, and we want to make sure that every educator has access to them. And then the second is help us identify these young leaders around the world in every part of the globe. Help us identify and develop, as Jack would say, these spatially native solution seekers. Help us find and cultivate Gen Geo.
That's fantastic.
And I think we have an actual video that helps illustrate how powerful this young community can be.
Okay, let's show it.
We have an amazing opportunity to shape the way a generation sees the world.
Our planet is changing. And that affects us all. There are big challenges and lots of reasons to help. I want to help create a better future. I want to be a leader.
I feel hopeful because there are a lot of people in the world who do care about the Earth. The first step in solving an issue would be learning about it.
Show me how to explore.
That curiosity leads to empowerment and the will to make change.
How to care for the planet.
I do feel like I could be part of the solution.
And for others.
We're all citizens of one planet Earth.
How to inspire.
If my teachers introduce me to a new idea or something that I can make a change in the world, it makes me feel empowered.
How to be a force for change.
We, all of us, are a global community of change makers.
And how to build a movement. Young people are the Earth's most untapped resource for hope.
And we're seeing it through movements led nationally by our youth. Students are not just the future, but we are very much part of the present.
Show me the world. And I will lead.
And I will lead.
And I will lead. And I will lead. Give us a chance to change the world. And we will lead.
Wow. Vicky.
That video always makes my heart sing.
Spatial vision is a leader in the geospatial industry in the Caribbean. We have plans to leverage the benefits of spatial or locational information. We inform them of geographic information systems can help them extract, exploit that latent data and efficiencies of your operation. Spatial Vision offers a wide range of services, from land surveying training, geographic information systems training, global positioning systems training, satellite imagery, and use of imagery training. Apart from training, we do technical services where we do installation, project management, systems integration. We started out with 3 persons, and we basically handle the portfolio from Fujitsu ICL Caribbean. We approach our customers from a position of partnership. We're not salespeople. We're coming up with innovative ways to deliver solutions. We have a reputation as trusted advisor to our clients. And so through word of mouth, we also get a lot of referrals. The key asset of the company is the knowledge. Where does that knowledge reside? Our advantage competitively is with our workers. We have a program of training our own in-house employees to be aware of the latest technologies and to find solutions from those technologies for our clients. And we're constantly on the hunt for new knowledge. Small business is critical. Entrepreneurship is a key converter of knowledge and culture into development. Not development just measured in terms of the metric of money, but development in terms of how will humanity progress from the work that is done through entrepreneurship.
Is he so?
Hello, good afternoon. Is anyone there hearing me?
We're hearing you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. So in this session, we will have one presentation, but we have two presenters. Two top class presenters will be presenting to us on another side of sustainable development, examining the psychosocial geographies of inequity and exclusion in the urban ghetto. Interesting topic. I am Raymond Poiser, the moderator for this session, and I just want to extend a warm welcome to all the participants who have joined this session and focusing on this presentation. Our two presenters, Ali Mabir and Dr. Robert Kinglock. Ali Mabir is an urban social geographer and graduate student. He is currently pursuing an MPhil in geography at the University of the West Indies, Mona. His current research focuses on the link among psychosocial geographies, exclusion and development among marginalized minority populations in Caribbean cities. He is supervised by Dr. Robert Kinglock. In 2019, he was awarded the Urban Geography Specialty Group of the American Association of Geographers Graduate Fellowship Award for his current work on mapping psychological indicators of social injustice and exclusion experienced by inner city communities in Port-of-Spain, Trinidad. He was also named a Clinton Global University Fellow for his commitment to the establishment of the Be Creative social initiative aimed at addressing elements of chronic social injustice experienced by youth within these communities. He has delivered several guest lectures to undergraduate urban geography students at his university and has served as a research assistant for a number of projects organized under local governmental organizations, international agencies, and NGOs, including the Nature Conservancy, the Hungry Cities Partnership Project, and the World Bank. Robert Kinglock is a researcher and lecturer in the Department of Geography and Geology at the University of the West Indies, Mona, specializing in urban planning, climate change adaptation and resilience, and geographic information systems. He is an interdisciplinary researcher, highly proficient in the application of quantitative and qualitative methodologies. His honors and awards include the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Scholar in 2018, Best Research Publication of the Faculty of Science and Technology, University of the West Indies, Mona, on March 1st, 2016, Principals Award for Best Research Publication in the Faculty of Science and Technology, February 2016, Award for Outstanding Teaching Assessment, Faculty of Science and Technology, University of the West Indies, February 2013, Award for Outstanding Service and Dedication, from the University of the West Indies Geographical Society, March 2012. Award for Outstanding PhD Dissertation for Faculty of Science and Technology, UWI Mona, and Department of Graduate Studies Award for obtaining a PhD with high commendation of the University of the West Indies. Ladies and gentlemen, other agents of change, please make welcome the duo presenters, Ali Mahabir and Dr. Robert Kinlock.
Hello, good afternoon. Could somebody give me an indication that they could hear me? Is my sound clear?
Yes, man, you're clear.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for that great introduction. And also thanks to everyone who's online now, who came out to this presentation. And thanks to the organizers of the event as well for the opportunity to present. Before I go any further, let me see if I could share my screen and show the presentation. Okay. Is everyone able to see? Get a confirmation? We all good?
We can see.
All right, that's great. Okay, so that's the topic of the presentation I'm going to be tackling today. The another side of sustainable development, the psychosocial geographies of exclusion in the urban ghetto. My name is Ali Mahabir, and I'll be I'll be talking the most during the course of the presentation. Dr. Kinlock may chime in, perhaps maybe towards the end during the Q&A, but I'll take point on this one. So this presentation is really going to be exploring the results of my dissertation, which is currently in the MPhil stage. So you already saw that information, so I don't need to retread that. So brief presentation outline. Going to be doing a short intro and background. We're going to talk about the study area, the different methodologies that we explored, both qualitative and quantitative. We're going to be conceptualizing exactly what exclusion is, because it was a core tenet of the research, looking at different results in different number of different dimensions, and we want to finish up with some conclusions and recommendations. All right, pretty standard outline. So bit of background in framing the issue now. I think its Caribbean region does have one of the highest proportions of the population considered urban, currently at 81%. And it's projected to increase even further in the future. Now, the real problem is that the countries of the region are really forced to deal with this sort of exorbitant growth, while at the same time facing structural transformations we have because of globalization, because of neoliberal trade policy, as well as a number of environmental challenges occurring because of climate change. And these issues are compounded even further in Caribbean cities, many of which are unplanned and uncontrolled. A lot of the growth taking place there, right? So this, of course, leads to the growth of informal settlements, We see it occurring on marginal lands. So the situation in a lot of countries of the region, this is a common occurrence, and local governments, as a result, become either overwhelmed, unprepared, or simply unable to address all of these challenges in the urban landscape. And this sort of leads to the problem of rising levels of inequality and social disadvantage that characterizes many of these cities. So this has definitely been the case in Port of Spain, Trinidad. The informal settlements there have continued to grow in the modern era, and inequality is in fact visible for everyone to see. There is this sort of juxtaposition of the wealth of the waterfront development. Literally, almost right next to that, you have the poor development standards of the informal settlements nearby. So the exclusion of the urban poor, this segment of the population, is continues, is visibly unaddressed, you know, while at the same time we have this economic development occurring. And inequality of this nature is certainly something that is not sustainable in the long run. It could lead to rising tensions, and as a result, the outbreaks of conflict and violence, which we often see happening in the past and into the present day, right? And this seriously compromises whatever efforts we may undergo to grow sustainably and develop the city and right. Okay, so the this looking at my study area now. So I study area, specifically the community of Beetham Gardens. It is a fairly small community. It is located on the eastern outskirts of Port of Spain. Port of Spain itself is the capital of Trinidad and Tobago. As you can see from the map on the left, it is divided into 4 phases there. There are considered 5 phases to be done, but the study focuses on the 4. The community is unique in where it's placed. Is located in between the 2 main arterial highways into the city of Port of Spain, the Eastern Main Road and the Beetham Highway. We see that many times in the past, residents actually engage in protests there, kind of blocking the road, and they kind of use that as a sort of political bargaining power in times when they're trying to, in those circumstances, right? If you can see from the map, north of Beetham, there is the area of Lavantil, and this area is known to contain rival gang factions who openly oppose the gangs that are present in Beetham Gardens. In Beetham, there's no real division there. There's mainly one gang that occupies the area, known as the Rasa City Gang, who mainly are in opposition with the Muslims located in Lavantil. So you have a conflict that's inherent to the landscape. So there are a number of previous studies, like by McCree et al., 1990, and also we know from the media representations of the area that the residents there undergo tremendous social disadvantage. This is something that is documented. Exclusion is a facet of life there, right? We know the population is one that is marginalized and characterized by very poor service provision. So, all right. So for the research objectives, what I really aimed to look at was, taking a multi-dimensional approach to the study of exclusion. This presentation is certainly not one that is very much GIS centric. If you was hoping for that, as you can see from the maps previously, I try my best. So it really aims to look at how socio-spatial exclusion and marginalization is expressed within enclaves, within this enclave of Beetham Gardens, right? And secondly, to really understand how what you could call a geography of hope is conditioned by these processes. Really, what I mean by that is, to what extent do these psychosocial dispositions and mindsets, like such as hope, could it factor into a sustained state of social exclusion? What role does it potentially play? Right. So as I said, is a multidimensional approach that was undertaken. A part of that approach involved a quantitative methodology, and the data collection took place through the use mainly of questionnaire surveys for this section, for this part of the study. It specifically targeted residents at the household level. So that was all occupied residential households in the community, both formal and informal. So that would include squatter settlements. So based on data from the Central Statistical Office, a sample size of 203 was calculated based on those parameters shown. And surveys were done preferably by talking to the head of the household, or if not available, some adult representative from that household. The questionnaire itself, it included a number of, it included a standardized series of questions, sorry. It was designed to gauge the forms and degree of exclusion experienced by the residents. It was also designed to gauge various psychosocial mindsets of the people who live there. And based on answers to these various questions, indices were developed, and each resident was given a score. For example, of exclusion, a score for hopelessness, a score for civic attitudes, etc. Right, and so the data was well, after data collection was completed, I aim to look at the link between exclusion and the psychosocial dispositions. So to that end, bivariate, multivariate techniques were used. In addition, the variables, because we managed to collect GPS coordinates for each household that was sampled, we were able to produce a continuous surface map of these various indices to kind of see the spatial representation, provide a rough visualization of how the psychosocial dispositions would have been spatially associated with each other and with exclusion. In terms of the qualitative methodology, it mainly involved in-depth interviews and was as well as focus groups. They were conducted really with community members, various other stakeholders there, to really give a social context to complement the quantitative data. Right. So before we go any further, I think it's extremely important to understand exactly what is exclusion. That in itself is a sort of inherently hard thing to do, because exclusion, based on the body of literature that exists, it's a very, it lacks a universal definition. It kind of, but there are some definitions that exist. The most comprehensive one, a famous one, is that by Levitas 2007, and that is what I kind of used to kind of frame the study, at least how exclusion was explored for this study. And basically, the definition states that exclusion is really manifested under three interlinked facets. First, there's a denial of opportunities for the marginalized, right? So, but however, the thing is, these same opportunities, they could be accessed normally by the majority or mainstream groups in society, right? So this results in generally unfair, unequal access to resources, in that they are not equitably distributed based on that identity, right? Based on belonging to that excluded group. So as a result, the excluded face an unequal degree of participation. Participation, it could be politically, in that they lack a say over their governance. It could be economically, in terms of high unemployment and having an unacceptable standard of living. And it could be lack of participation socially, in that they are not integrated in that a cohesive society that accepts them. So the study kind of focuses on understanding inequality in these economic, political, and social dimensions of participation. Right. So how was exclusion measured? It was done through the creation of an index. This was based on the UNDP Multidimensional Social Exclusion Index. basically what I did was adapt questions to a Caribbean context, a local context, and included basically 3 dimensions of exclusion that were measured, again, along economic, social, and political dimensions. So each dimension included around 10 variables. It added up to 30 in total, each having equal weighting. So responses were coded as either a 1 or a 0. And like, if it indicated the experience of exclusion, it counted as 1. So these were tallied up, and each respondent was given a score based on this, right? So based on the indices that were created, this index of exclusion, we were able to develop certain profiles, and that kind of was able to examine the differences that presented among different subgroups in the population. And as expected, different subgroups seem to have experienced exclusion differently. I'm not sure if the graphic is doing justice, but we see here some differences between males and females, and how they experience exclusion in social, political, and economic dimensions. Generally, what was interesting was that females were found to experience higher degree of social and economic exclusion, to a statistically significant degree in comparison to males. They scored higher in those experiences, while political experiences were kind of level between the two groups. And this was proven to be the case. We saw that women on average earned $1,200 less in comparison to men who earned 4,000 TT dollars a month on average. We see that they often had much lower unemployment rates, or were underemployed more often, and women in particular were found to engage in less aspects of had less access, to social support, both within and outside the community. And all the research indicates like people in these communities typically do seek that sort of support. Research also shows that women tend to not do that as much because of fear of being judged. If they go out for help, it's seen often as a personal feeling. So that could explain the dynamics we see happening there. Similarly, we see differences between racial subgroups in the area. We see that what was interesting was that Indo-Trinidadian residents scored higher in all dimensions of exclusion when compared to Afro-Trinidadians. That's something that I did not expect at all. But when you look at what's going on, they're actually sort of, in a way, a minority population in this community. They're a sort of minority within the minority, right? And the higher values of exclusion, it could be explained by the sort of isolation, the alienation, and the othering that they undergo by the wider community that's there. And a factor that contributed to the alienation they experienced was that their race was conflated with being a member of the rival gang, the Muslim gang, that is typically associated, may have a higher number of Indians in it, right? So that could explain could explain these higher values of exclusion that they probably experience. It related a lot to their identity, right? So what the research really focused on as well was these sort of psychosocial dimensions of exclusion. And it shows that exclusion kind of begins from the brain, it kind of begins from the mind. And subgroups who are affected develop cognitive, affective, and behavioral associations. It affects all aspects of their life, right? So the cognitive component really refers to the beliefs, the thoughts, and the attributes someone associates with something. Generally is the general knowledge of a person. And overwhelmingly, people in BTOM, their general knowledge related many lived experiences of exclusion. Overwhelmingly, almost everyone, like over 90%, indicated they thought it was more difficult to find a job because of their address. 71% felt discriminated or treated differently because of where they live, right? It's no secret people in these areas are discriminated for when seeking jobs, when applying for schools. It's kind of ironic in a way, in that in trying to better themselves to escape this marginalized status of exclusion, exclusion kind of reinforces itself, and they develop these cognitive attitudes like which are justifiable, right? The effective side of the psychosocial dimension refers to the feelings and emotions that are really brought to the surface as the respondents deal with exclusion, right? This was often expressed in the sort of frustration they displayed to those in authority, to politicians, and to police. Right, nearly half of all respondents related their feelings of anger and resentment to such figures. And another startling finding was that almost half of them as well reported feelings of severe sadness at the time the survey was conducted. And as we examine more closely in the following sections, a large proportion of them exhibited very low levels of hope, right, according to the various indices that were designed. So, and lastly, we see that residents basically in trying to cope with these thoughts and feelings, they develop strategies to mitigate against it, in terms of specific behaviors that they develop. And they do so as a sort of strategy to bypass the chance of being discriminated, because of how people characterize their area and themselves as their community is kind of scapegoated by the wider public. So in order to get a leg up, to get a chance, this is something they kind of have to do. They often lie about their address. 47% reported that they lied about their address. Some through the qualitative interviews, we saw that some of them never told the employers for years where they live. If a co-worker would drop them off, they would actually be dropped off, in an entirely different community, and then find alternative transportation home. So this is a serious degree of discrimination that exists on a geographical basis, and it affects every aspect of their lives, as we see. Right? So based on what we've explored so far, you could see why it is so important to look at these psychosocial dispositions. These negative, what you would say, self-evaluations, feelings of low self-esteem, low self-worth, they could lead to real feelings of disenfranchisement and despair. And when that happens, it could potentially cripple the agency of the individuals in these communities, and they also, as a result, their ability to engage in efforts of collective action, maybe to mitigate, against the experience of exclusion. So you see, so if they don't have this sort of motivation to rise up, or at least be resilient as they face their circumstances, it could reinforce exclusion further. It reinforces that identity of being othered. So exclusion would be perpetuated in the long run. It's why Madanipur 2012, he calls this being a state of chronic despair. They are said to be trapped in a dungeon of their own design. Very strong words. So we see that there is a need to look at and really understand hope and other psychosocial dispositions and the role that they play, to combat these exclusionary processes. So how was hope measured? Basically, tools that were typically used in a clinical context were adapted to a social psychological framework. I used two measures, the Hurt Hope Index and the Beck Hopelessness Scale. I used two measures kind of in parallel to ensure that the results were reliable. And when the results were they matched when they were compared. Basically, you see similar levels of hopelessness or low hope across the two variables that were measured. So, as an example, the Beck Hopelessness Index, it was a series of 20 questions residents either agreed or disagreed with. So, and higher scores indicated higher levels of hopelessness, low hope, right? So residents were grouped into categories based on the scores. It's standardized categories according to the testing measure. 0 to 3 considered normal. 4 to 8 was they were considered to be afflicted with mild hopelessness, and 9 to 14 they were considered to be afflicted with moderate level of hopelessness. Interestingly, the results show that most respondents were to be in the normal range, as you could see, but still a very, very significant portion of them, around 40%, were considered as having very low levels of hope or hopeless, right? And other statistical tests show that the differences in means was something that was statistically significant. Right, this is something that affected a great proportion of the population. We also were able to statistically link exclusion and hope, and we definitely see a moderately strong relationship there. Generally, what we see is an inverse relationship between the two variables. The greater degree of exclusion one experiences, you'd expect reduced levels of hope, right? This makes sense. Exclusion has a number of negative implications on victims, in a number of aspects of their life, as we can see. This could really harm their personal well-being. It would reduce their psychological resilience, and that like weakens their levels of hope. So this condition of reduced hope or hopelessness, it really acts as a severe internal constraint on people's motivation, their agency, and so they are less likely, they are more likely to accept their debilitating circumstances and situation, and less likely to engage in sort of collective efforts or individual collective efforts to fight against it, right? So these are some of the maps I produced. We previously saw the statistical link, so I'm trying to find now a spatial association between the two variables. And generally, we see when mapping areas of high exclusion, typically there is low levels of hope as well. Hopelessness. Areas in red at the top would be high levels of exclusion. Areas at red at the bottom map would be low levels of hope. Generally, where you have high levels of exclusion, you do have low levels of hope. All right. It was interesting to note that there were some instances where this may have not been the case, where residents did have like a high levels of households, had high levels of hope, like but experienced a high level of exclusion. I'm thinking that this may be perhaps data like this. When we map it out, it could, and we see instances like that. So where hope exists, even though the household experiences exclusion, these are areas that would be most respond better probably to intervention strategies, and these are probably the households we could look at the most, because look at helping, because the hope is there, the kind of inner fuel or motivation is there, so they are more readily to mitigate against the exclusion, right? But at the same time, when we look at other psychosocial dispositions, empowerment potential is similar to hope, but is more the ability to use the hope that's there and motivate yourself to achieving your goals. All right, I guess it may be considered another kind of facet, or the ability to really to realize your goals and to act on it directly. And we see that a lot of respondents had basically high levels. When we see high levels of empowerment potential, they generally had lower levels of hope. But there were instances when looking at exclusion and hope, where a given household, spatially, you find they would have low empowerment potential, low levels of hope, and very high levels of exclusion. So again, by mapping out the variables, we could identify that would be an area also that it would be in most need, in desperate need, in fact, of intervention strategies. So basically, the point of making the maps is really determining by using these structural indicators in conjunction with the psychosocial dispositions, we are better able to fully understand the various dimensions of inequality that are at play and get a fuller picture than if we weren't to look at, if we were just to look at the structural indicators alone. So that could be used, for example, as I said before, to develop specific intervention strategies, I see it as a way of really, adding on to this idea of community mapping or cognitive, by introducing this kind of cognitive component. Normally, community mapping, it focuses on, physical resources, but there's also, I think, when we just focus on that, we miss out on the ability to tap into the psychosocial resources that may be there, and something that could be extremely important, especially in times that we live in now with COVID, when mental health is such an issue. All right. So, all right. Lastly, what I'm going to be looking at is sort of focusing. Well, I looked at the link, both statistical and spatial, that we find between these psychosocial dispositions and exclusion. What I'm going to do to kind of cap off the presentation is to find out which aspects of exclusion had the greatest impact on predicting levels of hope. And this was done using logistic regression analysis. So I included like all the 30 variables of exclusion that were previously explored. They acted as the predictor variables. The outcome variable was hope, and this was placed in a model. And 5 variables stood out that was found to be statistically significant in affecting levels of hope. We see that here. The first one was socioeconomic status. Generally, those with lower socioeconomic status were 64% less likely to exhibit high levels of hope. That makes sense, because lower socioeconomic standing could be both a cause and a symptom of the inequities perpetuated by exclusion. What was surprising, though, was those without access to household internet was 66% less likely to exhibit high levels of hope. I didn't expect to find that, but it kind of makes sense, I guess, because I think I do feel a little hopeless when the Wi-Fi gets cut. But in all seriousness, though, what I think this represents is basically some form of chronic material deprivation among the community of BTOM, because generally most people in the community, they do have access to basic amenities such as water, electricity, indoor plumbing, etc. What people really lack is ICT connected device and household internet access. So that kind of becomes the kind of material deprivation that occurs within an urban community like BTOM, right? We found that there's a lack of trust in government institutions. This variable led to 70%. Those with a lack of trust in government institutions was 70% less likely to exhibit high levels of hope. This is understandable given the high level of political apathy residents often related to me. It was discussed that often when making decisions in terms of development of infrastructure in the community, they were often left out of public consultations. Often decisions were made by the state or by the city without their input. And many related the high degree of frustration that they felt towards the government. And it's also funny because the area is kind of known to be a huge vote bank for a particular political party. And despite all the frustrations, and the high levels of political apathy that were found according to the surveys, every election cycle, this area has voted for the same party. So I'm not sure if that has to do, again, with the hopelessness that's there. People see see the situation as if they have no choice, right? And lastly, what had the greatest predictor and levels of hope were the access to social capital and social networks. And this shows the immense value that social support networks can really have in during adversity, and the profound impact that social isolation can have on one's overall level of hope and well-being, right? And we often find in these communities that we need to bolster, we need to strengthen the social support networks that exist. And what we have is a lot of fragmentation along the borderlines, due to, gang territory being formed among the neighboring communities, right? So in order to rehabilitate, to strengthen the bonding and bridging capital, we need to work on rehabilitating the fragmentation that exists, although that's something that's easier said than done. So I'll skip that. I think I said something that I just had 5 minutes left, so I'll just focus on wrapping up right now. So basically, as we see, hope is really positioned to be an important building block, a sort of missing link in understanding sustainability. It is a big part. There's a big part of sustainability, that really focuses on futurity, and this research itself it really focuses on that in a big part, because it speaks about people's attitudes about the future. So if we were to understand their hope, we could sort of use that hope as a starting point, the raw material, the fuel, a fuel for their motivations to engage in individual and collective efforts to mitigate against exclusion. These kind of soft indicators as well, they could be used in conjunction with structural indicators for analyzing inequality. These psychosocial dispositions really just represent another dimension of the inequality that exists in the communities, and it's something that we really should not ignore, and we should definitely place a greater focus on if we were to attempt to solve the exclusion that exists in these communities, in the community of BTAM and other communities like it. So I think I'll end there. So that's it. And I welcome any questions at the time. Does anybody have questions?
Ali would want to answer some questions. So I'm wondering how comes none of the participants is posing any question yet. But let me say, Alim, was a very good presentation.
Thanks for that.
It is an area that I think more research should be done into in terms of more researchers venture into such an area to look at the geographies of inequality or inequity and exclusion, because there are so many unattached youth in our cities, right? I know there are some programs even in Jamaica. We have a program, Hope, that housing opportunity, productivity. You brought up Hope. I mean, I think more research should be done, and it's an area that persons should, in the social sciences, and should think about venturing into. So at least we can add to that body of knowledge and impact and influence public policies where these are some of these issues are concerned. But very good presentation.
Definitely.
I'm not seeing anyone.
I think I see some
posing
questions.
any question to you. So I guess persons have been.
I see some activity in the chat.
I'm seeing where. Yeah. I see where Robert wants to ask a question, but he's unable to unmute his mic. Can the technical team assist here, please, so that the participants can in fact unmute and pose the questions?
Well, I see some questions. I see some questions that were posed previously before Dr. Kinnock by Kiri Mahabir. See?
All right.
Will there be further studies to understand those with hope in high exclusion areas to see if those factors can be adapted for areas of high hopelessness? Well, will there be further studies to understand those with hope in high exclusion? Well, and somebody also asked, will I apply the study to various countries to gauge hopelessness? Well, at this time, I don't really have any further plans to look at hope in other communities, although it's something I would definitely like to do, would love to do, at least intellectually explore. It was something that I originally planned to do, but because of resource constraints, limitations on time, I was unable to. I kind of wanted to look at the area adjacent to Beetham in Lavantil, how they would have been affected as well. I wanted to look at similar communities in southern Trinidad, such as in Bacadere and San Fernando, to see whether this is something that would be maybe not universally experienced, but a similar experience that is shared. But yeah, limitations in terms of time. I couldn't get anybody to do the surveys with me. Everybody was scared to come into Beetham, into that area. So, maybe if somebody wants to do surveys with me, we'll go around Trinidad and do it. If I could get the free labor, we could do some more studies. But nah, not at this time. We don't really plan to do any further studies on hope. What somebody also asked something else. I think.
Just a second, Ali. I think that's the last question we are able
last question.
To take. Yes, unfortunately, because I'm getting a signal from the team that we're actually almost an hour and 15 minutes over the time that we should have gone with this one. So persons are being invited to return to the main room where the final session will be held. So let me just thank you very much, Alim, for your presentation. Good work. Continue to advance the study. Continue to add to the body of knowledge that other young researchers can come and have meaningful data that they can input in other studies that they will embark upon. Let me say thank you again for sharing with us in the second Jamaica GIS User Conference. And thank you very much also to all the participants who tuned into this presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you for staying with us from 10 a.m. until present. We're very happy that you were able to be with us for the first day of the second Jamaica GIS User Conference. So, what's the recap of our day? What did we go through today? We started off with an opening ceremony, and in that opening ceremony, we heard greetings from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. We also heard greetings from the UNGGIM Americas body, from Ms. Gabriela Seiko, also from the chairman of the Land Information Council of Jamaica, Mr. Williams. We then had the guest speaker, Dr. Jack Danjaman, who spoke to the whole interconnectivityness of GIS and how it facilitates the whole interconnecting of our world, and the whole importance of having a diverse mix of personnel with different geospatial skills coming together and doing significant work to advance the application of these various technologies in various fields. He spoke to AI and machine learning, and he spoke to various developments that are happening throughout the world in terms of the application of geospatial technologies. Importantly, he highlighted the fact that Jamaica has a strong sense of purpose with respect to GIS. And he spoke to the founder and the previous chair of the Land Information Council of Jamaica and her championing of the cause with respect to GIS in Jamaica. He also spoke about the whole innovativeness and how it is that we really need to engage ourselves throughout the conference and to really soak in all that is being shared with us. Afterwards, we then went into a very good presentation by Mikhail from OpenStreetMaps. And Mikhail gave an overview for us in terms of how it is that OpenStreetMaps is engaging and providing support to various countries. In particular, he focused on the Haiti case study with the earthquake that happened and the devastation and how OpenStreetMaps assisted that cause. He also spoke to the Jamaica case study and how it is that, yes, we're using OpenStreetMaps. Yes, we've had various workshops, but how it is that there is a need to advance our use of what is provided. He also charged us in Jamaica and other persons joining that OpenStreetMaps is available and they're willing to provide support whenever there is a need. We then went into various breakout sessions on climate change and education and various products and services that can drive and help you to really engage with respect to the use of various geospatial applications and resources to aid in whatever sector it is that you're from. So water resources and urban and regional planning and social sciences were all areas that we heard from, closing with disasters and education and urban and regional planning. So that was our first day, and what a first day it was. We apologize for all the technical difficulties that were experienced. Of course, we understand how it goes, yeah? Some things we really can't plan for as much as we plan and we plan and we plan. But we thank you wholeheartedly for remaining patient with us and for understanding and for staying on and for being a part of the journey from commencement to the end. So what does tomorrow look like for us? Tomorrow, we start again at 10 a.m. And at 10 a.m. UTC -5 time, we'll be starting off with a greeting from the Principal Director of the National Spatial Data Management Branch. We'll then be going into the keynote address by Mrs. Nadine Brown from the Planning Institute of Jamaica. Then we'll be looking at geospatial initiatives in the region, regional initiatives that are spearheaded by the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management America's body, such as the CariGeo project, Caribbean Geoportal, the Mega project. Then there'll be various presentations in terms of breakouts. Importantly, tomorrow is the first time we'll be publicly showcasing Jamaica's National Spatial Planning Information Technology Platform. So we invite you to be with us as we go through that. As the consultants give us a first viewing of what this platform will be looking like, which will be handed over in the next month or two. Breakout sessions tomorrow will also be under climate change, geospatial applications and workflow, also looking at water resources, right? And with that, we end with a plenary address by Randall Billy, and he's the sales leader of International Government Business Development for ESRI. So we had an exciting day today. As much as we had a few little glitches and challenges, I'm sure all the experience you had in terms of all that you learned, all that you soaked up, I'm sure you've been energized and that you'll be joining us tomorrow. So as we close out today, we thank you for being with us, and we look forward to having you on tomorrow as we continue and as we commence day 2 of the activities tomorrow morning at 10. Thank you again. Have a good afternoon and safe travel home if you're journeying home. All the best. See you tomorrow.